Packers officially SBOB?
This may surprise you because they are my pick to win the NFC. No.
Oh my God. Okay.
All right, because here's the definition as the inventor of the term.
Yeah, of course.
All right, here's the definition of SBOB. If you don't win or at least reach the Super Bowl, it is painfully disappointing. That's the key. Painfully disappointing.
I didn't realize.
Look, when the Texans or the Texans, the Titans, whoever, don't get to the Super Bowl, they're going to be disappointed. But it is painfully disappointing. And here's the SBOB teams. Kansas City and Philly, obviously. Kansas City for obvious reasons.
Question.
Philly
is
because
it
they
always
just won
the
it.
people that were just in the Super Bowl, they always SBOB?
Unless you lose a bunch of your great players.
Or if your quarterback retires, like the Broncos right after Elway retired.
Or even Peyton.
KC and Philly.
Yeah.
All right. This is the second group. Baltimore, Buffalo, and Detroit. Because obviously Baltimore and Buffalo, your quarterbacks are in there, hit their prime. They've been knocking on the door. Detroit has been knocking on the door and had some disappointing losses. The next group, and I'll put Green Bay with that, Green Bay and Washington. Washington's I'm just saying the quarterback's so young, it's not going to be like probably painfully disappointing. But they had enough success last year, made enough moves where they feel like, hey, we can win the Super Bowl. Green Bay, same way. And this is what I'm saying, Nick. They're so young. For the third straight year, they're the youngest team in the league. So, yeah, they'll be disappointed if they don't get to the Super Bowl. But they're so young, they're going to be like, man, we got something here. We're going to win one next year or the year. I just think they're so young that you're not like, oh, they got to win it this year.
I'm glad you added painfully disappointing to the definition, because Brew Forever, when we've argued about this, has said, like, you're telling me that they're going to be happy if they lose in the conference championship game. And then I say, well, they're not going to be happy. Everyone's going to be sad. But a week later, they're going to say it was a good season. And so now Brew's added a little sauce to it. So I appreciate that. I still, by the way, not to derail this, would include Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is on that list. They're not a young team. They're the oldest team. They think it's realistic.
And Dallas is always SBOB.
Of course. That's understood.
Can I listen.
Actually, they're not this.
They're
to say it.
Gosh, this show forces us
you agree with
you
agree with
things.
Why? What are you going to say now?
They're not SBOB.
No,
they're not SBOBQ. I don't even remember what that means.
That's
quarterback.
not going to take off.
Know.
That's not going to take
But they might be J-Lob.
Oh, gosh.
Jordan Love or bust. Because
not to the Super Bowl. Just a great season.
No, what I'm saying, I can't remember a quarterback ever, certainly since we've been doing this show, that had the type of playoff game Jordan Love had, and I don't think it was mentioned 48 hours after the game wasn't mentioned again.
That's right.
Like right now, if I say to the audience, like, hey, how'd Jordan Love play in that Eagles playoff game? They're like, not that bad. 3 picks. He had 3 picks against an Eagles team that at the moment was not thought of as this unstoppable juggernaut, and in that game didn't look like an unstoppable juggernaut. Right. They got better every single round. And that's on the heels of the previous year's playoff game, where he obviously was great against the Cowboys.
Well, I think don't you think he gets a little grace because of his first playoff game, he's great against the Cowboys.
First playoff game, he's great against the Cowboys.
In Dallas.
But then the next game, they're down 3 with a minute left and, around midfield and just throws a horrifying pick.
Yeah.
They lose that, and then in the game against Philly, he's bad. And everyone's like, okay, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, Herbert's gotten hell for his playoff game. Lamar's gotten some flack for his 2 turnovers. Goff got a lot. Like, he's the one guy who didn't. The Packers clearly believe we've got everything we need because we believe in him and everything else. So this, to me, the most interesting person involved in the Micah Parsons trade is Jordan Love.
Yeah. As someone who actually watches the Packers and doesn't just kind of randomly, just be like, oh, what's going on in the Packers world randomly? If you actually look at the timeline and how the events all unfolded, then we could understand how you got here. Let's just take the most recent one, the loss against the Philadelphia Eagles. First off, let's just get this out of the way before we talk about that real fast. The Packers are in a very fortunate situation because they are obviously football royalty. They're literally the Green Bay Packers. But they're also kind of in their own little island of where they are. So it's not this like massive major marketplace, media, marketplace like a Philly or even like a Baltimore, like, because you don't have that same East Coast, West Coast, LA, all that. So that alone now is going to be its own kind of different vibe and energy there. They're also really fortunate because it's like when the Packers are winning and when the Packers are great, since they're football royalty, everyone's all on board to be like, let's talk Packers, let's talk Packers, let's talk Packers. Like, look at this. Because of the Micah trade now, like, it's just Packers, 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 Packers. And everyone's like, yes, we get to talk about the Packers. Let's go, let's go, let's go. But unlike a team like the Dallas Cowboys or maybe even a team like the Eagles or trying to think of any other a common team right now that would kind of have this issue where if you're not winning or you're coming up short, right, you're not going to get the avalanche of media attention of what went wrong with the Packers, what went wrong with the Packers, what went wrong with the Packers. They do that for a team like the Eagles. They do that for a team like the Dallas Cowboys. They'll do that for some of these other teams because it's just again, either because the media energy is there, the fan energy is there, that it's a lot harder to hide. And even a Justin Herbert with the Chargers, because we can't pretend like the Chargers, even though it is LA, it's not like they have this, the same level of fan interactions as, say, a Philly or a Baltimore or currently right now, of course, Kansas City. Herbert had his bad game but it also came and went in a lot of ways. Whereas I don't think it would have come and go if it was a team that just had a lot more of just like a media and fan engine behind them. That's just kind of the one overarching point that I want to point out. But also the most recent playoff game, I mean, a lot of people did not feel comfortable. If a lot of Green Bay Packers fans didn't even 100% feel comfortable in that game because they were already starting to unravel with injuries. That much was very clear. Jordan Love was just never quite right. And then in the middle of that game, players were dropping like flies. So there was I remember watching this game where like the Eagles are going to win, and I just wonder how much of the conversation is going to be steered around just the injuries around the Green Bay Packers. Now, Jordan Love 1000% did not play good in that game. No ifs, ands, or buts. I don't care about any issues with the O-line or receivers or anything like that. He made bad throws and bad decisions, which I've discussed. And said if he was better at managing a game, and I always tell Packers fans, watch that game and look at it through the Jalen Hurts lens. Jalen Hurts won that game because he managed that game beautifully. The Packers defense was awesome. And Jalen Hurts took care of the ball and was just really, really incredibly smart. He didn't throw for 300 yards and rush for 90, but it was a really smart game. And if Jordan Love had that style of game, there could have been a situation where they could have maybe come away with the win or certainly make it a lot closer. And that's not what happened. But my experience reading all the comments, interacting with all the Packers fans, that the way how that season ended, it was very much just like, man, that was a mess of a season. We dealt with a lot of injuries. We could never really get our legs from under us. Then we lose, obviously, to the Eagles. And it's just like, all right, we're just punting this last season and we're moving on. We're just throwing it away and we're just moving on. That was my read on the whole thing. And then the year before that, it was Jordan Love's first year as a starter. And he finished up the season absolutely on fire, right? That final 10-game stretch, they absolutely annihilate the Dallas Cowboys in one of the most entertaining games that I've ever seen in my entire life. And then it was a typical kind of on the road, ugly-ish, kind of also exciting. It was a very, both textbook and also bizarre playoff game against the 49ers and the Packers. And yeah, Jordan Love made a bad decision and threw that interception, but it was seen more as, he's a young kid, he's a gamer, he's a baller, he's trying to do everything he can to win this game. He just has to learn that that's not the right moment. And you just chalk it up to him just being like, he was just a little young in that moment, right? He showed his youth in that moment, which is totally okay. You're allowed to show your youth, in the moment. And you're just kind of like, all right, now, what are you going to do? You're just going to hold his feet to the fire again and again and again. And I mean, I don't understand the argument here. And then, like I said, 2024, they could just, that leads into 2024 and they just could not get it together, and that sometimes that's the way how seasons unfold. Sometimes that's the way it happens. it was a sloppy season for them, and yet they still were able to find their way into the playoffs, which is pretty remarkable. And they actually did play the Eagles pretty well. Yeah, and also I think one of those interceptions that Jordan Love had was like at near the very end of the game, if memory serves me correctly, and it was like one of those interceptions where you're like, that doesn't really count. Like you're obviously just trying to do anything you can right now, and you just let it rip. Like, yeah, I don't really count that. I'm almost positive Jaden Daniels had an interception like that against the Eagles. I think Herbert had an interception like that against the Texans, where you can pretty much scratch that off. Like you don't really count that at this point. But yeah, I mean, this whole Jordan Love or bust type thing, I mean, I don't think anyone saw last year or the year before that this Packers team was so amazing, and that if they just got their quarterback right, they're winning Super Bowls. They had that sense with at least the discussion that they tried to create was about Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. And and as someone who's covered both those teams extensively, it's completely different. Like that's not the energy at all. That's not the energy at all. There's definitely some fans that are like, I want to see Jordan Love be great. Like, come on, like let's do it here. And I understand that, but there's no sense of like, we built this amazing team. We got the best coach, awesome across the board. If we don't win, it's all Jordan Love. Like, people were already going with that mentality for the Eagles and Jalen Hurts before the season even started. That is not the case that I've observed at all with the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. At all. Now, that could change very quickly, right? That could change very quickly. If Jordan Love starts to turn the ball over and he's got, in the first, 5 game, whatever it is, the first handful of games, and he's got 10 touchdowns and 7 interceptions or something, or 8, people would be like, all right, like, this is still kind of all over the place a bit. Then, like, yeah, I could see that. But, to me, it's still kind of a wait and see situation. And I do think the Packers are S-Bob. I very much look at it pretty much exactly how Brew explained it, where it's just like, if you don't at least reach the Super Bowl, but let alone especially if you lose the Super Bowl, like, it's just going, it's not that it's going to be painful. It's just like there's going to feel a sense of failing, of you failed. And what Nick said though, like, oh, if you lose, like, a couple weeks later, you'll still feel okay about it. You'll feel like, okay, that was a good season. You could theoretically make that with every team that at least makes it to the conference championship game. I mean, I interact with Kansas City Chiefs fans all the time, and they still will consider the years that they got to just the AFC Championship game a success, okay? Or even just getting to the Super Bowl and losing. They're still like, well, it's amazing that Mahomes and the Chiefs even got to the Super Bowl in 24 or against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, like, you can always make that argument, so I think you kind of have to not be too literal with the phrasing here. It's just the mentality of, if you don't win a Super Bowl, if you don't at least get to the Super Bowl, you're going to be pretty frustrated. You're going to be pretty annoyed. You can always justify it, especially if you're a grounded fan and maybe not as all or nothing thinking, that you could say, all right, that was still really good. We made it to the NFC Championship game. We lost to the reigning Super Bowl champions. They obviously have an unbelievable team. They're just like a year or two ahead of us. Like, next year now, I'm really excited. Jordan Love showed a lot of growth, and Micah, really upgraded that defense. Like, you can always make that type of argument in most cases. Some cases you can't. Like, if the Eagles lost to the Commanders, it would be like, heads would roll. If they lost to the Chiefs again, it would be like, what the heck? Like, the Eagles, the Philadelphia would not accept it in a way that we've seen the Ravens or the Bills or the 49ers do it. So, like, there can be different degrees of this, but I think if you're looking at it through the lens of, like, Matt LaFleur has been the coach for a long time right now. Jordan Love will now be in the NFL for a chunk of time. Like, that's why I don't putting them on the same category as the Commanders now, I think is kind of insane. Mainly because of the continuity that you've had now, specifically with your head coach, Matt LaFleur, offensive mind, and your quarterback, Jordan Love, and the team that you're building. The defense is good enough. Like, you don't really have these glaring weaknesses. The Commanders were an absolute mess of a franchise. They're now going to have their second-year quarterback, who obviously they were great last year, but it was still a second-year quarterback now. And Dan Quinn's second year with the Commanders. And for about, 2-3 decades prior to them arriving there, the Commanders had been an absolute mess. That is not the Packers. That is not the Packers. Pretty much like every year you could say, yeah, they're going to be in the playoffs. Yeah, they're going to be contending. You know, like their hardest transition was transitioning away from one of the greatest quarterbacks ever in Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, okay. And they were very fortunate to hire someone who I think is a great coach, Matt LaFleur. So they've continued to make the right decisions. So I don't think they get the kind of this level of patience isn't the right word, but like I just think that the Commanders, it makes a little bit more sense for them to be on a bit of an extended timeline when you've been such a mess and now you just brought in new quarterback, new coach, and kind of just have to let that bake for a minute or two. I think very much you would see that in a way, even though they did not go as far as say the Eagles did in 22, because you had like a messy season in 21 for the Eagles, but they still made the playoffs and you're like, okay, that's pretty good. And then 22, you get to the Super Bowl, you come up short, but then 23, it was like, we took a back, we went backwards now. And now 24, it's like, let's go. Now Philly does crank up the intensity a lot more than I'd say other teams. And so if you look at it with the Packers, it's like they got Jordan Love. Before that, they had Jordan Love, but Aaron Rodgers was still playing, and there was still kind of a belief of like, hey, we can win, we can kind of do this, like, you know, like Aaron can still sling it. It's like kind of an ugly season, didn't quite get there, didn't even get the playoffs. Then boom, you got Aaron. Now you got Jordan Love, plays great for the second half of the season. Dominate the Dallas Cowboys, who, remember, people were saying this team can win the Super Bowl. Nick Wright had them in the Super Bowl. Nick Wright had Dak Prescott as the MVP. Like, there was a lot of energy behind that team. They smoked them. Then again, come up short against the 49ers, who then did end up going to the Super Bowl, of course, and were also considered a great team. So it's like, you know, kind of just coming up ever so short. Then the following year, you feel the feeling of, okay, we kind of went backwards here, like the Eagles in 23. And now this next year, now you make this big move. You get Micah. Eagles got Saquon Barkley, right? Like you're saying, we're taking a swing. We're making moves to really take this big step forward. If you don't prove that those steps got you forward, yeah, man, it's just going to be disappointing. And I think even if you get to an NFC Championship game, you know, I think you'll still be bummed. You'll still be like, why can't we get this together? And think about the teams that you could lose to. If you lose to the Eagles, I think that would probably be the best case scenario in terms of vibes, because they obviously had just won the Super Bowl already, and now if they beat you like in an NFC Championship game, I mean, they're going to a Super Bowl again, right? That means they've gone to now 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, right? Or whatever it is. And so if you lose to the Rams, you're going to be extra bummed because you're like, this team has gone through multiple iterations and they beat us now. The Lions, you're like, this team, you know, lost their coaches. They built this great team, like, and we've now had years to be able to build something better than them, and we haven't done it. If the 49ers do it, you're like, dude, what the heck? Like, Jordan Love's supposed to be better than Brock Purdy. Like, you know, the 49ers were such a mess. They lost so many players. They have such an old team, blah, 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 blah. They lost Debo. Christian McCaffrey is 97 years old. Like, what the heck, right? Like, you would also be frustrated by that as well. The Commanders, you're going to be like, what the heck? Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders, they leapfrogged us, right? Like, they were a joke for years. They make a couple changes here and there, and within a year or two, they've leapfrogged us. Right, like I look at it through that lens as well. When you look around the league and think, you know, who's past you. So I don't know though. I just honestly, I think it's a little bit of a shame that we're getting too bogged down by this type of conversation, because when I first brought up First Things First to start to make clips for today, I see like the Packers are at the top of the show, and I'm like, that's awesome, because if they didn't make this trade, they just wouldn't be. For the longest time, so many of these Packer segments were these like little 3-minute segments, like leading into, you know, a commercial. And they would just be like, Jordan Love, Jordan Love, Jordan Love, Jordan Love, Jordan Love. And then it would be like lead into a commercial for a car. And it's like, all right. And then I'd try my best to try to make something out of that. And yet, like, now throughout this season, it feels like you're going to have real conversations about the Green Bay Packers all throughout the season. So that alone puts the pressure on them. But I think in a positive way, in an exciting way. And I think if you're a Green Bay Packers fan, you should be excited, because there's going to be plenty of content for you to consume, certainly from my end. But those are just my thoughts I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love? Do you think that they are officially S-Bob or Jordan Love? Jordan Love, Super Bowl, Jordan Love or bust, S-Lob? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.